Tonight, something unusual is happening around one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. American forces are again striking military targets, connected to threats against commercial shipping. A maritime blockade on Iran has been reimposed. Tanker operators are reconsidering whether the Strait of Hormuz is safe enough to enter. War risk insurers are warning shipowners to pause or reassess voyages. And Tehran is threatening that the pressure may not remain confined to a single, narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman. None of these developments taken alone proves that a larger strategy is unfolding. There is no public evidence that Iran designed every stage of this crisis in advance, and it would be irresponsible to pretend otherwise. But when the pieces are placed beside one another, a disturbing possibility begins to emerge. What if the real danger for the United States is not that its navy will be trapped inside the Strait of Hormuz? What if the trap is much larger than that? What if America entered the crisis believing it was accepting one mission, only to discover that every decision creates another mission that is harder to refuse? By mid-July 2026, the United States had reimposed a maritime blockade on Iran and carried out renewed strikes against Iranian military targets associated with threats to commercial shipping, while Iran threatened to widen pressure against regional energy exports. Reuters also reported that 9 of 11 vessels recorded passing through the strait during one recent period used the Iranian route, with several carrying Iranian exports. An unusual pattern that does not prove selective control, but does reveal how unevenly insecurity can affect maritime traffic. Welcome back to Global Frontline Analysis. If you prefer to understand why events are happening, rather than simply hear that they happened, you are in the right place. Subscribe if you want calm, evidence-based analysis of the military, economic, and strategic forces shaping the world. And let us know where you are watching from. Because tonight, the most important question may not be whether the United States can overpower Iran militarily. In a conventional contest, the imbalance remains enormous. The deeper question is whether military superiority is enough to prevent Washington from becoming responsible for an expanding crisis that it cannot easily control. The central hypothesis is simple but unsettling. Iran may not be trying to defeat the United States. It may be trying deliberately, or simply through the logic of escalation, to make the United States responsible for everything that happens next. That is the analytical premise at the heart of this story, not a proven secret plan. America thought the mission was simple: protect commercial ships, keep Hormuz open, punish attacks on maritime traffic, restore deterrence, prevent a critical energy corridor from falling under the control of force. On paper, that sounds like a limited objective. A destroyer protects a tanker. An aircraft strikes a missile launcher. Surveillance systems watch the coast. A hostile radar is disabled. A warning is issued. The shipping lanes reopen. The crisis ends. But real conflicts rarely remain inside the boundaries drawn for them at the beginning. First, America has to protect the strait. Then it has to protect the ships using the strait. Then it has to destroy the weapons threatening those ships. Then it has to protect the aircraft and warships carrying out those attacks. Then it has to defend American bases against retaliation. Then it has to reassure allies who fear they may be next. Then it has to consider what happens if pressure spreads beyond Hormuz to another maritime corridor. Then Washington discovers that it is no longer merely defending a waterway. It is managing an entire system of escalation. And that is where the possibility of a trap begins. The first door closes the moment a major power publicly attaches its credibility to a specific outcome. Once Washington declares that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open, every serious interruption becomes more than a commercial problem. A tanker attacked in the strait becomes a test of American deterrence. A shipping company refusing to sail becomes a test of whether American protection is convincing. A surge in insurance costs becomes evidence that military control of the sea does not automatically create confidence in the market. An ally asking for protection becomes a test of American commitments. The United States is no longer deciding whether to become involved. It is deciding how deeply it must become involved to defend the promise it has already made. The moment America accepts responsibility for keeping Hormuz open, every ship that stops moving can become politically and strategically an American problem. This matters because Hormuz is not an ordinary shipping lane. Before the current conflict disrupted normal flows roughly 1/5 of global petroleum liquids consumption, and around 1/5 of global liquefied natural gas trade moved through the strait, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. There are pipeline alternatives, but their spare capacity cannot simply replace everything that would normally move through the waterway. That means a crisis in Hormuz does not have to produce a complete physical closure to create global consequences. A shipping lane can remain technically navigable while commercial operators decide that the risk is unacceptable. Tankers can wait, routes can be changed, cargoes can be delayed, insurance can become more expensive or temporarily unavailable. The military map may show an open waterway, while the commercial map shows something very different. And this is the first strategic complication. A navy can fight an enemy. It cannot order private companies to feel safe. It can destroy a launcher on the coast. It cannot guarantee that another launcher does not exist somewhere else. It can escort one tanker, or several tankers, or a convoy. But can it escort the global economy? That is the escort trap. The question is not whether the U.S. Navy possesses enough firepower to defeat Iranian ships in a conventional engagement. The more difficult question is how many commercial movements must be protected, for how long, and under what rules. Every tanker does not need its own destroyer for the burden to grow. The burden begins with surveillance, intelligence, air defense, mine countermeasures, patrol aircraft, aerial refueling, maintenance, logistics, base protection, command systems, diplomatic coordination, emergency response. Each additional layer is manageable by itself. The strategic problem is accumulation. Iran does not need to sink the U.S. Navy. It only needs to create more missions than Washington wants to sustain indefinitely. This distinction is critical because it changes the meaning of military victory. Iran could lose almost every direct tactical exchange and still impose strategic costs. A missile site can be destroyed. A radar can be disabled. A drone can be intercepted. A small boat can be stopped. But after each tactical success comes another question. Is the threat gone, or has it moved? Does another launcher exist? Will retaliation come against the ships, against a base, against an ally, or somewhere outside the original battlefield? A conventional military seeks targets. An asymmetric strategy seeks obligations. The stronger side may destroy what it can see, while the weaker side tries to expand the number of things the stronger side believes it must defend. This creates the cost trap. A relatively inexpensive threat does not have to defeat an expensive defensive system to create pressure. It only has to force that system to remain active. A warning can trigger patrols. A drone can force an interception. A suspected missile position can require surveillance and possibly a strike package. A threat against one tanker can affect the decisions of dozens of other commercial operators. Iran may lose the individual exchange and still increase the total bill. America can destroy a weapon, but another problem can appear somewhere else. That does not mean the weaker side always wins. Economic pressure, military losses, and internal political strain can eventually become overwhelming. Iran has its own vulnerabilities, and they are serious. Its military infrastructure can be struck, its economy can be squeezed, its energy exports can be disrupted. Its leadership must consider domestic stability as well as external conflict. The point is not that Iran has discovered a magical strategy that guarantees success. The point is that the objectives of the two sides may be different. The United States may seek to restore order. Iran may benefit simply by making order expensive to restore. Then, something stranger appears in the shipping data. During a recent period, before renewed U.S. blockade enforcement, Reuters reported that 9 of 11 vessels tracked passing through the strait used the Iranian route, including ships associated with Iranian energy exports. This does not prove that Tehran had created a secret system deciding who could and could not pass. The sample was small, the circumstances were fluid, and shipping patterns can be influenced by many operational factors. But strategically, the pattern raises a more important question. What if chaos in Hormuz does not need to hurt everyone equally? A completely closed strait is easy to understand. Nothing moves. The world reacts. Pressure for a solution becomes immediate. But a strait in which the rules appear uncertain can be more complicated. Some ships move, others wait. Some operators believe they can manage the risk. Others refuse. Some cargoes appear safer than others. The result is not total paralysis. It is unpredictability. And unpredictability can become a weapon, even when nobody has complete control. Commercial shipping depends on calculation. Owners calculate route risk. Insurers calculate exposure. Charterers calculate delay. Energy traders calculate supply. Governments calculate the political consequences of shortages. Introduce enough uncertainty into those calculations, and the market can begin disrupting itself. That is the fear trap. America can strike missile sites. It cannot bomb uncertainty out of a balance sheet. It can declare that a corridor is open. It cannot compel an insurance underwriter to accept the declaration. It can say that naval forces are present. A shipping company may still decide that one accident, one missile, or one misidentification could cost more than waiting outside the danger zone. In early July, Reuters reported that some war risk insurers were advising ship owners to pause Hormuz voyages after renewed attacks, while other underwriters reviewed their terms. Earlier in the conflict, insurance costs had already surged dramatically as the Gulf became more dangerous. The U.S. Navy can clear a channel. It cannot clear fear from the market. And this is where the logic of escalation becomes more dangerous. America strikes back to reduce the number of threats. But every strike creates a new security problem. If Iran threatens commercial shipping, the United States deploys forces. If the United States attacks Iranian military infrastructure, Iran may retaliate. If Iran retaliates against American facilities, those facilities require greater protection. If regional allies fear becoming targets, Washington must reassure them. If additional forces are deployed to provide that reassurance, those forces themselves become additional potential targets. The solution to one vulnerability creates another object that must be defended. This does not mean the United States should never strike. Failing to respond can also carry costs. Restraint can be interpreted as weakness. Unanswered attacks can encourage additional attacks. The trap is precisely that there is no cost-free option. Escalation may deter some threats while creating others. Restraint may reduce immediate escalation while weakening confidence in American protection. Military action may reopen a route while making the wider region more dangerous. The strategic problem is not choosing between a good option and a bad option. It is choosing between different kinds of risk. This is the moment when the map begins to grow. At first, the entire crisis appears to fit inside the Strait of Hormuz. Iran to the north, Oman to the south, the Persian Gulf behind it, the Arabian Sea ahead. But zoom out and another geography appears. Yemen, the Bab el-Mandeb, the Red Sea, the Suez Canal. Another set of shipping lanes, another set of military deployments, another concentration of global trade. In the latest escalation, Iran threatened broader pressure against regional energy exports. while concern has returned to the possibility that instability involving Iran-aligned forces in Yemen could again threaten shipping around Bab el-Mandeb. That possibility is not the same as proof that Iran has ordered a second maritime front, and no responsible analysis should claim that such a plan has been confirmed. But Washington does not need certainty before it begins preparing. And that may be enough. The second front trap does not require a second front to become fully active. The threat of one can already consume attention and resources. What happens if American planners must secure Hormuz while also preparing for renewed danger in the Red Sea? What happens if ships, aircraft, intelligence assets, and air defense systems have to be positioned not only for the crisis that exists, but also for the crisis that might exist next week? The United States is capable of operating in multiple theaters. That is not the question. The question is what happens when the number of places requiring persistent protection continues to increase. The trap is not that America cannot fight in two places. The trap is that America may keep adding places it believes it must defend. Hormuz becomes one mission. Base defense becomes another. Protection of Gulf allies becomes another. The Red Sea becomes a contingency. Energy market stability becomes an economic priority. Diplomatic management becomes a political necessity. And all of this occurs while Washington still has commitments in Europe and strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific. Military power is large. Political attention is not infinite. Ships can be redeployed, but redeployment creates absences somewhere else. Air defense interceptors can be produced, but not instantaneously. Intelligence systems can watch many regions, but priorities still have to be set. Senior leaders can manage multiple crises, but every crisis consumes time, bargaining power, and public tolerance. That brings us to the alliance trap. America is not protecting only itself. Gulf governments have their own calculations. Some may fear Iranian military pressure. Others may fear that American escalation could expose their territory to retaliation. Asian economies care about energy flows. European governments care about shipping inflation and regional stability. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other regional actors do not view every aspect of the crisis in exactly the same way. One ally may want a stronger military response. Another may want rapid de-escalation. One government fears Iran. Another fears an open-ended war with Iran. One partner worries that Washington will do too little. Another worries that Washington will do too much. That is the alliance trap. Every decision reassures someone and frightens someone else. If America escalates sharply, partners may welcome stronger deterrence while fearing regional retaliation. If Washington limits its response, some may question whether American guarantees are strong enough. If it negotiates, critics may say pressure has been rewarded. If it refuses to negotiate, others may conclude that the conflict has no political exit. The longer the crisis lasts, the harder it becomes to satisfy everyone at the same time. And this is where the deepest version of the hypothesis appears. What if Iran does not need to control the crisis? What if it only needs to create enough uncertainty that America becomes the manager of the crisis? Iran creates a shipping threat. America protects the ships. Iran threatens retaliation. America protects its bases. Regional partners become nervous. America reassures the partners. Another choke point appears vulnerable. America prepares for another maritime mission. Energy prices become unstable. Washington must consider the global economy. Diplomacy becomes urgent. Washington must find a negotiation that does not appear to reward coercion. Iran creates uncertainty. America inherits responsibility. This is the logic that makes the idea of a trap so powerful. Not because an Iranian fleet is waiting to surround American warships, not because Tehran possesses some hidden weapon capable of defeating the United States in a conventional battle. The trap closes when Washington reaches a point where every available exit carries a price. Escalate, and the conflict may widen. Stay, and the financial and military burden continues. Negotiate, and opponents may argue that force successfully brought America to the table. Leave, and allies may question American credibility while Iran claims it endured. A real trap is not necessarily a place from which escape is impossible. It is a place where every exit has a cost. That is the distinction between a tactical trap and a strategic one. A tactical trap surrounds a unit. A strategic trap surrounds a decision. And the most dangerous strategic traps often become visible only after the original objective has changed. America may have entered the crisis to defend navigation. Then, defending navigation required attacking threats. Attacking threats required protecting forces. Protecting forces required reassuring allies. Reassuring allies required maintaining a presence. Maintaining a presence required considering every place the conflict might spread next. The trap did not close around an American warship. It closed around the mission. But was this Iran's plan from the beginning? Did leaders in Tehran deliberately design a sequence in which the United States would be pulled deeper, one decision at a time? Was Hormuz always intended to become a mission Washington could enter more easily than it could leave? The honest answer is that we do not know. There is no public evidence proving the existence of a single master plan controlling every stage of this confrontation. Governments often act with incomplete information. Military decisions create unintended consequences. Leaders improvise. Bureaucracies compete. Events move faster than strategy. Iran may not have predicted every American response. Washington may not have anticipated every Iranian countermeasure. A crisis can produce a strategic trap, even when nobody designed the trap in advance. In fact, some of the most dangerous traps in history are not built by one brilliant planner. Two enemies build them together, one decision at a time. One side acts because it believes it must. The other responds because it believes it cannot appear weak. Each action changes the environment. Each response narrows the next set of choices. Eventually, both sides find themselves in a confrontation that neither originally intended to manage at such scale. That possibility may be more realistic than a perfect, secret Iranian master plan. Iran may simply be exploiting opportunities created by escalation. The United States may simply be responding to threats it cannot politically ignore. But from a strategic perspective, intention is not everything. Even if Iran did not plan every stage, Tehran can still benefit if the crisis forces America to defend more places, spend more resources, divide more attention, and accept more responsibility. And another country will be watching that process carefully. China does not need to coordinate secretly with Iran to benefit from American distraction. There is no public evidence that Beijing and Tehran designed the current crisis as part of some unified conspiracy against Washington. And such a claim would go beyond the available facts. But great powers constantly observe how rivals allocate attention and military resources. Every crisis the United States must manage in the Middle East becomes part of a larger strategic calculation elsewhere. Ships matter. Air defense systems matter. Munitions matter. Intelligence capacity matters. Diplomatic attention matters. Political energy matters. The United States possesses enormous resources, but no state possesses unlimited resources. From Beijing's perspective, the relevant question may simply be whether prolonged instability in the Middle East makes American strategy in the Pacific more complicated. From Moscow's perspective, the question may be whether another conflict strains Western attention. From regional powers, the question may be whether American commitments remain predictable. None of these actors needs to create the crisis to learn from it. There is no need for a secret conspiracy for several American rivals to benefit from the same distraction. This does not mean the United States is doomed to lose. Far from it. Washington still possesses enormous military, economic, and diplomatic advantages. American forces can destroy infrastructure. Naval power can escort ships and pressure adversaries. Allies can share burdens. Alternative energy routes can reduce some vulnerabilities. Diplomacy can create off-ramps. Iran itself faces enormous costs from prolonged confrontation. A strategy based on sustained instability can eventually damage the country, creating the instability. Economic isolation, military losses, and domestic pressure are real constraints. Tehran must also calculate the risk that one attack goes too far and triggers a response far larger than expected. An asymmetric strategy can impose costs on a stronger power, but it can also produce catastrophic miscalculation. That is why the future remains open. One possible outcome is renewed diplomacy. For that to happen, both sides would need a formula that allows them to reduce military pressure without appearing to surrender publicly. Another possibility is a prolonged pattern of limited attacks and retaliation in which neither side seeks full-scale war, but both continue testing the other. That scenario may be sustainable for a time, but it carries a constant risk that a major casualty event, a strike on critical infrastructure, or a mistaken identification suddenly changes the rules. A third possibility is wider regional escalation through attacks on bases, allies, or additional shipping corridors. That would transform the mission again, increasing the number of targets the United States believes it must protect. And a fourth possibility is that economic pressure eventually becomes the dominant force, pushing regional and external powers toward a settlement, not because the political disagreements are solved, but because the cost of continued disruption becomes too high. None of these outcomes is inevitable. The most important signals now will not come from dramatic speeches alone. Analysts will watch actual shipping movements. They will watch whether insurers regain confidence. They will watch naval deployments, air defense activity, and changes around American bases. They will watch whether Iranian threats remain rhetorical or are followed by new military action. They will watch Yemen and the approaches to Bab el-Mandeb. They will watch whether diplomatic channels remain open, even while public rhetoric becomes more aggressive. And above all, they will watch whether the American mission continues to expand. Because that is the real measure of whether the trap is closing. At the beginning, this looked like a fight over one narrow strait. Then the tankers became part of the mission. Then the Iranian coastline. Then American bases. Then Allied security. Then the possibility of another choke point. Then the global energy market. Step by step, the geography expanded. Step by step, the responsibility expanded with it. Iran does not need to trap the U.S. Navy inside Hormuz. It only needs to trap America inside a mission that keeps getting bigger. Maybe this was Tehran's strategy from the beginning. Maybe it was not. Perhaps what we are seeing is something more chaotic, and in some ways, more dangerous, a strategic trap being built in real time by two adversaries that believe every new step is necessary because of the step that came before it. America rushed into the Hormuz crisis, believing military power could restore control. Perhaps it still can. But the deeper Washington moves into this confrontation, the larger the mission becomes. More ships to protect, more bases to defend, more allies to reassure, more waterways to watch, more consequences to manage. And eventually, the most important question may no longer be who has the stronger navy, who has the more advanced aircraft, or who can destroy more targets. The question may be who controls the definition of the mission. Because a military operation can begin with a clear objective and still become something entirely different. The mission can expand quietly, almost logically, until the power that entered to restore order becomes responsible for preventing every possible form of disorder. And once that happens, the final question is no longer whether America can win a battle in Hormuz. The United States almost certainly possesses the military power to win many such battles. The final question is whether America can still choose when the mission ends, or whether the crisis itself has begun making that decision for Washington. America entered Hormuz. Who decides when it leaves?